Hi, this is 52 Weeks Live, 52 Weeks of Design Live. I'm Alexa Hampton, and today we're going to go live with Zoe Feldman. There's the update has changed things. Hello,
Hey.
how are you?
Hi.
I can hear you.
What's up, Lex?
What's up, Zoe? So,
I'm worried
um,
this is going to be like a catch up and people aren't going to get it. So you have to be
okay,
careful.
so we'll minimize the inside jokes like stinky pizza and stuff like that. And instead, I am going, so obviously, I've known you for a long time,
Mhm.
and I knew you prior to your becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Um,
Very, very prior to. Yes.
so when did you found Zoe Feldman?
So this will be fun because you
Or
probably
no, when did you find Zoe Feldman?
have, that was like 7 years ago.
Uh-huh.
The actual the founding of my company has a lot to do with you. So what'll be interesting about this is
Do
everyone
tell.
listening that I'm just kissing Alexa's ass. Can we say that?
Ample ass?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, we've remained very loving and supportive of each other
Yeah.
permanently,
Yes. But
which is not a bad thing.
right. But you did launch my career. So, and you ruined me in the process, which I didn't realize. When I left you, I moved back to the great state of Florida, where I originated from, and attempted to work for someone very, very briefly. And because I'd worked for you and I'd worked for the best of the best and in the best of the best and all of the best of the best, and unbeknownst to me, really, because I had no context at the time, like I had no contrast, I had no idea that there was another version of things. I was like, oh, I cannot work here. I just can't. I felt like I was going backward. So that's when it was a lot of naivete and grandeur, probably. I just launched my own thing, and I definitely wasn't ready.
Or
It,
ambition.
yeah,
Well, except that everybody I talk to on these talks, whether they're starting their own fabric line or they're starting whatever, they're always like, wow, if I knew what I was getting into when I got into it, I never would have done it. So I feel like it's a completely integral part of doing things.
yes, but it's very scary to make mistakes, as you well know, when you're very young and not.
Also, when you're older, it's not fun to make
It's
mistakes.
but when you have a little more cash behind you, it gets less scary. Like in the very beginning, you're like,
I,
oh,
I think it's always just super,
yeah,
super scary.
yeah, it was really terrible when I was young and making a lot of mistakes. So yeah, we're better off now.
So you moved from Florida to DC.
Yeah.
And how did you go about? I mean, that's like just a complete, that's really diving in on the deep end because you're going to a place where you have not been.
Right.
You were single when you moved there, right?
Recently,
There's a, there was a lot of newness. So
yes.
how'd you go about doing things?
So I was actually, when I decided to leave Florida, I was thinking, oh, I should go back to New York. I was doing a job in the Hamptons, and that made a lot of sense to go back to New York. I was, like you said, familiar with it and all of that. But I have a tendency to enjoy newness and new journeys. And I felt sort of like, well, I've done that. What can I do? I have to get out of Florida. What can I do that isn't New York and still have access to New York easily because I was working on this project? And one of my closest friends, a couple of my close friends, one of whom you hung out with once and we went and partied. I know you mentioned that on your thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's from here, and her father was a very important architect.
Hat girl.
Leslie?
I don't know. Was she the one with the hats?
Maybe. I can't believe you remember that. I have no idea. Anyway. Um, okay. So, oh God, what were we talking about? All right. Anyway, she was here. I had a built-in group of friends. Her dad was in the industry, and I could get to New York easily. And then, of course, the time I had met this boy, and that was okay, I'm in.
Uh-huh.
The always icing on the cake, seemingly always icing on the cake. And so I came here and I had this project in New York. And so I wasn't hyper concerned. And I was living with one of my best friends and he had this great place in Georgetown. And he's like, you can work from here and pay me what you can and you can live here.
I mean, that's a pretty sweet
setup. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's lots of stars aligning because that is totally atypical.
I mean, have good friends, be a good friend, and good things happen is really the moral of that story. And so, he helped me out a lot. And and so and then through him and through my friend, I met other clients and everyone truly was impressed that I'd worked for you. And we had done work here, actually. I had done a job here with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
had a little familiarity. And I just tossed your name around a lot. And that's really true.
So silly. It's interesting. You're one of the few people and I'm not going to say it. I don't recall what our age difference is, but you started working at what?
It's not remarkable. It's normal.
So what year was it when you started at Markhampton?
I want to say 99.
Okay, so that makes sense. So my father died July of 98.
Yeah.
So it was, it was real early. So it's interesting. Hopefully, nobody wants to start their professional life with somebody who's, also kind of clumsily navigating crap. But hopefully some of those mistakes that you saw me make informed you to know what you did or didn't want to bring with you when you did your own thing.
I think so. I think so. I take a lot. I truly do. And everyone can attest to that here. I take a lot of what I learned from you and I apply it here. I think I learned more about clients and I did learn things. I learned things I didn't want. Yes. And I learned things that I did. I wasn't clear on that while it was happening, but yes, now I look back.
And I think it really requires you when you're a person sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to create my own company. It forces you to make choices.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah.
So I'm not going to ask you what are my huge mistakes because they're probably the same things, but I am going to ask you, so in the ensuing years,
yeah,
there are lots of design questions I want to ask you as well, but I remember we were talking just, was it like 5 years ago when you called me and you said about your interviewing?
Oh, yes. About how to,
like 5 years ago? Tell that story. And then I'll get into design questions, but I feel like it's very, it says a lot about you. And also the fact that you decided you want to do this and that you reached out and were like, hey, is this something you want to do? Blah, 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 blah.
Wait, I don't know what you're talking about.
When you said, okay, so I have never charged for interviews.
Okay.
Still haven't, still don't. Sorry, they're like weird shafts of light coming in.
About when you go to a potential client meeting?
Yeah.
Like the first time someone says, hey, I want to come hang out with you. I want you to-
Yes, because that's what I want to come and hang out with you. Precisely, nobody on earth has ever said that when hiring me.
I feel like people would definitely pay to hang out with us.
But you did this new, and it was a new way of looking at it, and it was like good citizenry.
Okay, you're talking about when I decided to charge. I was confused. I thought you meant when I was hiring and I called you. Okay, got it. Okay, so what people have been telling me you should charge. Your time has become more valuable. Every job isn't worth it. You need to start charging. It will weed people out. But that didn't sit well with me. It obviously doesn't sit well with you, so it wasn't something I was comfortable with. But I'd been looking to give back. I'd recently had a baby, my first baby, and shockingly, I realized in that moment that the earth was burning and I had just brought a child into it. And it was jarring and uncomfortable. So I thought, okay, how am I going to give back to the world and try and fix this problem? One.
So how am I going to do my part?
I'm going to do my part. And maybe grow my part, but yeah. And so my father had been doing it in his small business. And so I'd been inspired by him. And so I thought, okay, people keep telling me I need to charge. I don't want to charge, but I also feel it's annoying that I have to go to all of these things only to realize sometimes they're not a good fit and it's a waste of time for them and a waste of time for me.
Yeah.
So I decided that I would charge for the meeting. 100% of the charge would go toward one of 4 environmentally focused charities. And then should they sign with us, we would match it. So that's what we do.
Like there's plenty of time for us to discuss like what you think is pretty and how you like to work and what your process is. But I think just that story says a lot about you. And it's wonderful.
Well,
it's like wanting to live a certain way and then doing it.
Yeah. And our thought behind it was, well, we ask the potential client to research for themselves which charity. This was the reason we didn't want to choose the charity for someone, because we're hopeful that the clients will then go on to say, oh, ocean cleanup, that's really interesting. I'm going to start donating that myself. So that was
creating a relationship.
Exactly. And then we're hopeful that in hearing this, that people will say, oh, I could do that. I mean, I wasn't charging for it anyway. It's not like I lost any money.
Yeah.
And yet you match. I mean, at that point, you're signing a massive client. It's not even a thing.
It's wonderful. And it says, as I said, it says a lot about who you are. So now that we've established that you're a wonderful person, tell me a bit about the company. So you have, because I can tell just by going to your website that it's different. It's a different version. So tell me about your version
of how it is now.
Yeah. What is your company comprised of? How do you all function together?
Okay, so we have a design team that's comprised we work in teams. So we have typically in a team, a design assistant, a designer, and a project manager. Then we have some interior architects who work alongside the projects and help to support the construction as it moves along and are less client facing and more working with the architects and the contractors. And then we have an entire operations team that does all of the purchasing and tracking and accounting. And my husband recently became our CFO, which is really exciting and has been amazing. I was not sure I was going to go. It's been incredible.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah, it's actually great. And we work in such different worlds. That's, I think, why it works. And then we have a small marketing team that works alongside, we have a wonderful publicist in New York who's amazing and works alongside her to do all this sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, so that's a lot of players, and it's a lot of stratification. And I don't say that critically at all. I think it's amazing. It's very organized. I get it. I get why theoretically it would make sense. How does it make sense though to you in terms of managing that?
Okay, so I've recently,
because that sounds really challenging. Sounds like a lot.
It is, and it's not my best. My brain is not really that of a CEO. That's not where I thrive. It's not what I enjoy best. I don't love to manage people. It's not my favorite space.
Or at least you don't love to manage people in what you and I might imagine managing means.
Yeah. Also because I've only worked for you and me. I'm like,
so bad.
In corporate America, what are midterm evaluations?
Yeah. I mean, we just go out for pizza every night after work and drink every night. We were Ally McBeal.
It was amazing. I mean, for me, that was a perfect environment. Personally, I loved it, and I loved how family it was. I've recreated that here. I mean, I can go on and on about all that and how it is very similar to how I don't know how you function now 400 years later, but how you function.
Well, yeah, like married, kids, it's different.
Right. Like I was at your wedding, but no children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was at your wedding, no children.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so what was the question?
How do you manage all of that? It's a lot. how do you, or you don't have to say like how you manage it, because I know a lot of it is you can't even define it. But when you think about it, how do you think about it in a productive way so that you're getting your arms around it theoretically?
Okay, so here's what's insane. I've been working with these advisors who are like lean management efficiency advisors. I don't even know if that's the right title, but it's something like this.
Well, I get it.
Okay.
So that's good.
Yeah. And he has come in and he and his team, they've come in and restructured us. And now everything looks the way that it looks. And we're in the process. We're currently doing it. We have now about 6 months of execution we still have to complete. But yeah, it's intense. What I realized through it is that I want to be the like chief creative officer. I don't want to be the CEO. I am right now. I'm not exactly sure the long-term play because like how that all rolls out. Mm-hmm. But right now, I manage it by meeting with teams. They put things on my calendar. We call them design development meetings. I pop in, they show me all of their work. I edit, mm-hmm. and then I move to the next one. And then I edit, and then I move to the next one. But I'm also stuck in the weeds with some like CEO responsibilities, even though I don't exactly know what those are, but I know that they're not as
well. Yeah, nobody else in your office is doing them. So let's call them that.
Yeah.
CEO, owner, whatever, person in charge.
Exactly. And I'm realizing now I'm learning to hire people who are actually higher level, like a person who's a director of operations. I never even thought that was a job or that there would be someone like that. So I was speaking with her this morning and my feeling was, well, you're better at this than I am. This is what you're good at. I don't want to micromanage you. I'm just going to likely mess it up. So let's have this conversation. I'm glad we're having this conversation. Here are my thoughts, but now you go on and do your job and I don't want to get in the way of it.
It's also terribly grown up and fabulous. I'm so impressed. I'm like, oh my God. I always feel like I'm like on the verge of a nervous breakdown and spinning out of control. A director of operations. I mean, damn.
I know.
So how many are you in the firm?
I think we're about 17 maybe now or something. Mm-hmm. We're looking to hire maybe 3. So
when you hired the whole group.
No.
How do you get the marriages to work? How do you know which designer and which assistant designer, which project?
That's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard mainly because sometimes there'd be a great fit for a client, but they're full. So they can't even consider the client. Because It's true that each team has different strengths and each team has different aesthetics. And, you know, that's a bit challenging. What is it?
Somebody called. I beg your pardon. I'm going to text that person so that they know. Don't call again.
That's challenging. I never even thought about that. Yeah, it is challenging. It's all, you know, some of what we talked about right now is a little still aspirational in that we're working toward even more efficiency. So if we do this again in a year, I think I'll maybe be clearer on that answer. But right now we sort of...
I think the minute you lose aspirations, you suck.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Right? Like, I mean, hopefully every year it's getting tighter, it's getting better, it's morphing, it's growing, better work is being done, or not better, but like, you know, different.
Like when we didn't have teams, we just worked on different things. Are you still that way or do you do teams and things now?
No, I'm still on every job.
Yeah.
But I have, you know, somebody is with me on every job.
Right. Okay.
You know, nobody wants me to be writing up their purchase orders. I mean, no. And I wouldn't even know how to do it at this point. I mean, I remember when I was like, I mean, it's just like walking down memory lane. But it's, you know, it's an interesting thing. It's like there's a part of it that like how much, you know, ego, like how much, you know, I want to know what the trim looks like that's going on that chair.
I know.
I need to know. Because I'll have an opinion. So, but I very much enjoy the collaboration of people, obviously whose taste I admire, they wouldn't be working with me. Like I think they're great, and I love chewing it over with them. But yeah, it's just interesting. It's just interesting. And also, what somebody once said to me, which I feel like I've talked about on one of these lives, that you can have the right person for the job, but not the right person for the office. And I have had that be the case.
Okay.
Someone who is totally good for the job and who I liked, but who ultimately was not a good fit for the office. And like that's mind-boggling. I mean, it's both obvious and mind-boggling.
Yeah,
So the fact that you're maintaining each of those threads is incredibly impressive to me on top of the creative work.
so in terms of like office culture, them not being a good fit,
Yeah.
we've had that for sure. I actually realize now more than anything that that's almost more important or as important. Didn't realize that for a long time.
Yeah, it's
People at times, they lasted like 4 minutes. They were like, this is, years ago before we had any structure. I just didn't even like think that anyone else wouldn't just want to wing it the way we were doing it.
Yeah.
Just sort of, yeah, make it pretty. Let's work all night. Let's do whatever,
Yeah.
And people would come in who were coming from a corporate environment and be like, I have to go. This is insane. So that was one
So they were coming in from a corporate environment, so coming in to do design work, changing careers.
Yeah. And it just was a really bad fit. Now it might not be such a bad fit now that we're functioning as a proper office. But now we have a very casual, similar to you, a very casual vibe about us. And I still want to retain the sort of family environment and it feeling not hyper corporate, but I realize the need for structure. That's what we've really figured.
I am fascinated by the idea of project managers because, I mean, don't you ever come across a situation in which a project manager wants to go into the creative side?
Yes.
And I ask that because I don't understand the desire to be a project manager because it's not my best look,
Same. Yeah. I can pick the grout, but then I won't notice if the wrong grout's there until it's fully completed. I won't do all the checks and balances.
I mean, at least grout, it's a color, you get it. Yeah, I mean, project manager, it feels like there's less, it's all stick, no carrot.
Sort of. So the way we've structured it is the project manager, while yes, it tends to be more of an A-type person and more structured. A person likes to dot their I's and cross their T's and things that I admire so deeply in someone.
Yeah, me too.
It's so necessary.
People who love having paperwork days. I'm just like, wow, you're the sexiest person on earth.
100%. I'm like, how does someone love that? But I love that you love that.
Yeah.
But some of the people who do project management for us are actually very creative and very talented. That is crazy to me that they sort of can have both brains. But what it comes down to is we look at where their deeper strength is. And then if they are still interested in the creative, it's very collaborative and they still have a say in that. And they still able. And they also like the problem solving nature of it.
Yes.
Creative in its own way in a more architectural sense, but it is creative. And so I think that's why it ends up working out. I feel that oftentimes a project manager would be taking on too much because then they would look like they're a designer and a project manager, and you can't do both. That's what we've learned. You just can't. There's no time to do both. You can, but not without a price. And so I think because it's so collaborative, it ends up working out.
Okay, so I've picked your brain about all the structural stuff because I find it fascinating, and I think it indicates that you're thinking on this level that is deeply professional and shows interest and ambition. And let's talk about some fun stuff for a second. Like, where's your style at right now?
What am I into?
I'm sure that you have lots of itches you're scratching because, you don't want to be doing the same thing all the time. But what is delighting you right now?
So it's interesting you say that because I think I've become known kind of for color. And first of all, I realized that my shirt is really competing with the art while watching this.
No. Symbiotic with the art.
Being like into it. Okay. So but I'm finding myself not really pulling away from color so much, but pulling away from color a little bit.
I'm not really pulling away from color, but I am.
If I'm being honest.
Well, you don't want to be a predictable,
Right.
You'll have to be a creative person. You have to.
Right. And I'll really be able to pull away from color because it's ingrained in me. And I think it's such a character in this whole story we're creating,
Mm-hmm.
And I think without it, there's a miss. But I think I'm getting more sophisticated with how I use color. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
How you deploy it.
How I deploy it. That's, you've always been wonderful with your words.
My daughter once, we were walking down the street and I think she was 5 and I said something and she looked at me and she goes, "You and your words."
Oh my
God. I was like, did you just slime me, little child?
Well, I remember sitting with you at the edge of a bed and I'm talking to you as we always did. And you said, "What did you just say?" And I said, "I'm going to go get it." And you go, "Get?" It's get. And I was like,
my big word thing with you was that we were in a taxi, and I remember this vividly. Do you know where I'm going with this? No. You said something, and just to locate this in this part of time for anybody watching this is the emergency of Britney Spears. It's that moment in time, and you were like, you said, I shouldn't say you said can you believe this is happening, right? And I was like, right. And you're like, yeah, right. And I was like, is that an exclamation or is that a question? And you're like, it's both. and I just remember that vividly, having you bequeath that to me, right?
That's hilarious. So
exclamation point, question mark.
You constantly making certain that we were saying, yes, it is I. Yes, and then I'd never had anyone. It was great. I feel
such a biatch.
Elevate it. No, because it elevated my speech, and I appreciate that actually. And now I look back on it fondly and try and deploy those words.
Yes. Yes. So actually, it's interesting for me to have this, this formal interaction about how you work and design, because you do speak it very well, and I love hearing you speak it because it's something that needs to be spoken, and you can speak it. And I don't know how you can convey things to people, homeowners, whomever, or you're doing these new collaborations. I don't know how you can get it across if you don't speak it. So speaking of some of your new collaborations, you've just done this new kitchen collaboration. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and you're such a journalist. It's so good.
I'm just curious. I just wanna know what's going on.
With your weaving very nicely. So we just launched a collaboration with District Loom Vintage Rugs, and what that is essentially I curate the collection.
Sure.
Rugs that I love, and then you can buy them.
It fits like a plan.
It fits into our ethos for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
We don't want to continuously produce. I mean, I believe in the production of product, but I also believe in the repurposing of product. And so I think it's nice to have that under our belt. And then we just started a collaboration with a cabinet company called Unique Kitchen Bespoke. I think they're changing their name. And that's been really fun because I took a page out of your world and I was able to name the cabinets something. So I chose to name them after women whom I am very close and mean something to me. And I know this is what you do with yours. And so that's been really fun and really nice. And that just launched.
Yeah. And it looks amazing. I mean, I feel like you're really busy in very exciting ways.
But we are being very careful how we collaborate, because
you have to be. You could wake up one day and have a different career than you intended to if you do not manage it.
And you realize you have a responsibility to truly put out good product, either put your name behind good product or produce good product. And if it doesn't do that, it will.
What's it for?
Correct. And so we've been approached by.
I can't hear you. Somebody calling you?
No, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you said you've been approached by some people and then I lost you.
And we had to turn down we chose to turn down a couple of collaborations because they didn't align with our mission, which was hard because for
Yeah,
obvious.
no, of course but that's wonderful. Do you have an actual mission statement?
Yes, it's might be changing a little bit, but it's essentially to leave the world more beautiful than how we found it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a double entendre, obviously.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Thank you.
Nothing wrong with that as a mission statement. I do think though I'm saying this as though I'm saying something contrary. I'm not. I totally agree with you that you have to filter everything through whatever gauge you have, whether it's a mission statement or your gut or whatever. It has to be checked. But sometimes I do think there's room for, I don't know how this might be useful to me or my career, but I like it and I want to do it.
Yeah.
So there's got to be like a little room for improv.
Yeah, like you're intrigued by something. You never thought about it, never made any sense to you, but you're kind of interested in testing it out. I could see that. Yeah.
I was at the Institute for Classical Architecture and Art night before last, and I was talking to some young architects who, draw by hand and draw beautifully. And but they don't have much use for it in their current, they have use for it, of course, but they're doing a lot of CAD at work. And I find myself ruminating a lot these days about, there was a moment in time where everybody was talking about, how am I going to monetize this? I want to monetize that. Oh, this part of my life, how can I monetize it? And it's kind of so grim and gross that everything, where's time for art? Where's time for a pastime? Can't you be good at something and not and this coming from somebody who has a lot of lines. It's an interesting thing, I think, for all of us to chew over, that there's place in our lives for non-professional pursuits.
Yeah, well, I think what you're speaking to is the moment you monetize something, it takes a bit of the beauty out of it. And now
unless it's really successful.
No. but still you have to sit down and do it when you don't feel like it. And yeah, you like the back end of it is great.
Yeah.
But you're not just sitting down. I was listening to one of your lives recently, and you were talking about just drawing while watching a movie you've seen before, whatever, and not thinking about it and just zoning out and recharging or whatever you're doing. There's no likely room for that. It's sort of like on your to-do list have to create cabinet line. So,
but I think those things are also good. So after, when did you leave me?
I was thinking about that. I think 2003, I want to say.
So had I signed the Hickory Chair contract?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay. So I had done that brand package.
Yes.
Okay. So the brand package with the kind of quote unquote mission statement and finding five adjectives that describe the benefits of working with, in my case, with me, and the 5 words that describe the attributes of the quote unquote brand. You can slot in Zoe Feldman for that, the attributes of Zoe, what's great about this firm. And I do think that exercise of expressing your beliefs it's a great and valuable. And to say, okay, do cabinet line, do this and this, because you don't have to stick to it.
Yeah.
You can write it down and then be like, I was sitting with Chris Fitzmiller once at lunch and I was showing him this, and this was ages ago. And I think, I said to him, by the way, this is a really old document. And he's like, yeah, potpourri. On my list. And I was like, oh, wish I'd deleted that. The mistress of potpourri.
And Evelyn and that whole world.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's great, and I'm sure you have, knowing you. I identified certain areas that you would be interested to pursue, but you don't need to hold yourself to it. There's room to.
And sort of like what you said, I find I'm very interested in just in the creative process and stretching, to your
Mhm.
point. So I'm less concerned about, I really want to design lighting. Like I'm so stoked about lighting than just, I want to keep stretching and figuring out what's interesting and not be flypaper, be conscious and be, consider where I'm going and have a map, but not have
Intentional.
right intentional,
Yeah.
but with room. And I think that's where we
Yeah.
start. I think that was your point, to not be so rigid that there isn't room for something that might be a bit of a surprise to pop in and be like, what about me? I could be cool, you know?
And going back to like where your style is right now.
Right. Okay.
So maybe historically or in the last 5 years, as it has been expressed, it has attained this description, but you're growing and changing, and this next deployment will be something different because you were a creative person.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And that's, I think, what it is. I'm watching my style evolve a bit and I'm excited for it. And I think it would just become so boring if it didn't. And I know I can't live in the same space all of the time. I'm so what I'm seeing is
Headspace or physical space or both?
both. Both. I was speaking more to headspace and like
Mhm.
creative space. Um, it's interesting. I was touring some Chelsea galleries last week, and it was so fun because we were talking through art, and I'm obsessed with art, and it was interesting to watch these artists. A lot of these artists are known for a certain period, similar to your father, known for a certain period. You actually have expressed this with your father a lot. All the
Yeah,
iterations of Mark that no one knows
right.
about.
Yeah. Or
I mean,
people know about it, but that's not the lazy one liner.
well, they
The
like,
elevator pitch is,
yeah.
English, whatever, but it's certainly not an accurate
And
description.
niche people know about it. True, like people who truly love design and are truly interested. But if you
Right.
talk to the masses, they're going to say, "Oh,
Right.
English."
Picasso, people are thinking whatever. They're not necessarily thinking about his deeply figurative work when he was a young man.
Right, or Rothko's deeply figurative work when he was young.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so that kind of spoke to me just as a reminder that it's not only okay to evolve, it's important to evolve. And that I worry that my clients will be like, because it's happened a bit, like, well, where's all the fun and the color? And I'm like, it can be on the walls and
There
all.
will be no fun in this
Yeah,
project.
boring stage where no
um,
one drinks and no one dances and no one has fun. No, but I'm sort of like, well, we're looking at color differently now, where it's maybe it's in the art, maybe in the pottery, maybe it's in the rugs, and it's just evolving a little bit, and it's not evolving so fast that it's unrecognizable, but I can see that it's evolving, and I'm excited for it, and a little bit hopeful that other people will be excited for it.
for sure. I mean, take that off your concern list.
Okay.
Everybody's here for it. Phew. As an eminence grise to you, at least. Um, so let's talk about your house. Do you live in your forever house? Do you think you live in your forever house? No. Are you in a starter?
Well,
I kind of.
you've yeah, because you knocked down every other wall right around.
We didn't not. We assembled. Um,
Well, when I met you, you were in the one bedroom, the chocolate brown one bedroom.
right.
Yes.
Pavlos is making noises, but we all know who's in charge of where we live. There,
Hey,
there's a funny joke that a friend of mine told me. She heard her father having a conversation with somebody, and the person was saying, well, what does your wife do? And he's like, well, she stays at home, but she chooses where our kids go to school and what religion we practice, and you know how we spend our money and what our culture is. And the person was like, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I figure out what to do with Europe. Just like large political ideas. It's very funny because she was about to, anyway, I digress. So
I not live in my forever home. I live in I wouldn't say a starter home. I love my house.
okay, tell me about your house.
Okay, so our house is a Wardman style home, which is a single home that's split into two, which is quite common in DC. So it's similar to
Is that after a person's name, or is it like your award in the house?
No, it's after a person's name. I think it was an architect back in maybe the 20s, because the house was built in 26. It's a 4-level, essentially townhouse, is how it feels when you're in it. It has, it's in the first of all, we share a fence with the Russian embassy, which is just very.
No, don't say things like that, because now anybody can find you.
Oh, well, I'm not that.
I mean, I think you're in a safe space. I think you're in a safe space. But yeah, they're not going to go up against the Russian embassy. So you're safe space.
Thinking about stealing me, there's the Secret Service are constantly on the road. Okay, so anyway, we share it with an embassy. Okay, and it's funny because we were looking for a long time at homes, and they were all sort of, they didn't have enough character for me. I needed something that was interesting, obviously, had character, which isn't impossible to find in DC, but I was finding it hard in these single family homes. And I came.
Did you have kids yet?
Yeah. Yes. I had one child and I was pregnant with Juliet.
Okay. So you had also like a list of things that needed to be accomplished.
Yes, exactly. And so I walked into this home. It'd been on the market for a long time, maybe 60 days. I mean, long for today's world, right? Where things just pop off, and they have been for a long time. So I don't know, I guess I expected it to suck or something because no one was picking it up. And I walked in and it was like being in the south of France. It had this beautiful front entrance that was tucked away and hidden and had all this like hedges and well, I've gone on to make it even more this way. And then you walk in and the home is, each floor isn't so big as like you wouldn't expect, as you would expect, but each floor has maybe 3 rooms. And so we were able to construct it in a way that we're at the top level, which we've completely redone, which was really fun. It was my first renovation for myself.
Yeah.
So we have our bedroom and bath up there. And then the second level is the children's rooms and an upstairs den and a couple baths. And now my husband Matt's office. And then the first level, which we also redid, which is the kitchen, which is which I like, a small little galley kitchen we've redone.
I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I wouldn't know what to do with the kitchen.
No, like we don't have an island or anything like this. And the whole thing's very French feeling. And then we have a basement, which I try very hard not to enter because I fundamentally, I just don't like basements. They're to me a bit. And probably if I could totally redo it, excavate and do it right, I'd like it, but we're not doing that. Anyway, so I do love my home, which is one of the reasons I'm not.
And what's the color scheme? Is it colorful? Is the art bringing the color? It's always interesting to know what people do for themselves.
So for all of you out there who care, we'll be publishing this year, but next year, because we're still in 2021, but it is not as colorful as you would expect. I have tons of art that I've been very lucky to acquire through my family. And so that is really the star of my home. And then sadly, my grandmother passed away in September, and she had all original Knoll furniture that she gave me. So before that, I had like nothing in my living room, and it fit perfectly in a way that feels sort of like this is why the world makes sense. Like this, it all was just meant to show up here.
You have great faith in the universe.
I do. It's helped me a lot, actually. And so, and then I have some funky moments. My powder room's a little bit funky. I don't know. It's sort of this blend of classic and modern. So because it has classic, architecturally classic, but more modern when it comes to the art and the furniture, with a lot of vintage.
And then juxtapositions are everything, right?
Yeah. And not very thoughtful. I like my spaces to feel, even for my clients, more collected and evolved than we created it. You can't touch anything, don't move anything.
Yeah.
And my house feels this way. My house. And we have one room that's a bit more like bohemian feeling. It's very patterned, but in a French way. Oh, pattern on pattern on pattern.
So are you a Francophile?
I think I've become one.
And I know you were proposed to in Paris.
Yes. That I was what?
Proposed to.
I was. I was proposed to in Paris. That is right. And therefore, I am a Francophile now. No.
As you know, I was proposed to when Pavlos was
In bed.
overserved, and I was in bed, and therefore I've become a fan of those attributes.
But then you had the greatest wedding in Athens.
So what is the like, do you have a timeline where you're going to force yourself to move, or would you love to get a place in the, you know, a vacation place? Like, what's the dream? I mean, I'm obviously we all dream about having everything, and you know, like, but what's the dream that you're heading towards that you may never get to, but the one that's in your head?
Okay, so we purchased a townhouse in Georgetown for our offices in March, right before COVID happened, which was terrifying. So that slashed a very quick, and we thought we would purchase a second home. We would have purchased a second home.
Yeah.
So I think that we'll wait on that for now. What was the question? What's my dream?
Well, would you ever move into that house?
Oh, no.
Or would it only ever be work?
No, I don't think I'd move into this one. I think that what will happen is I will publish our home, and then I will promptly begin to look for a new house. And Matt is desperate for that not to happen. But he understands it's my job. And
is that the story we're going with?
Yeah, I mean, it's that or completely redo it. Like, you redo your place all the time. Or at least you
I don't. I've just lived here so long that it might appear that way. But having said that, there are some major changes afoot. I know, I'm such a hypocrite. I do think that's a hazard for people like us.
Yeah.
Is that we just can't let it alone. And sometimes it's to our detriment. You know, sometimes it just we need to stop. But
is if the person who lives next to us ever wanted to leave, we'd love to do what you've done.
Oh, yeah.
But I asked her, and this doesn't feel like a reality that's going to happen.
Well, I mean, we waited 15 years before we were able to do our final assembly.
Okay, so maybe it will.
I mean, you know, it was we were like, we can wait.
Well, why did you choose to continue to assemble instead of move?
Oh, well, you know, living in a place that's not hugely desirable means that you can afford a lot more than you could, you know, if I lived on Fifth Avenue and 72nd, what we could afford would be much different. You know, right. We've got huge ceilings and 3 fireplaces and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And every time Pavlos would make noises about our moving, I was like, you know, if you can find what we've got,
right,
knock yourself out.
Right.
But also, yeah, I guess inertia as well. But how long do you think an interior, this is both for you and for a client, how long do you think an interior lasts? What's the lifespan?
Before it starts to date?
Or wear out?
Yeah, right.
Or you just need something different? I would hope that none of us are so trendy that it would outgrow relevance.
No, but I think to your point, probably like everything will trend. Everything, even if it trends back in, you know, even if it's classic, I think that's just the nature of trending. I think probably 10 to 12 to 15 years until things begin to feel really tired.
I totally agree with that. I think 15 to 20 is if you're a meticulous housekeeper.
Yes.
And 12 is probably correct.
Yeah, because even if you're a meticulous housekeeper, I do think that just color schemes and certain things will just begin to date. And, you know, no?
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, you know, the Bass apartment with the huge Rothkos, that didn't date.
Fair. Well, you're, okay, fine.
Yeah.
In very isolated scenarios, that is an untrue statement.
So I was watching Sex and the City last night.
Okay, interesting. I saw your take on the apartment.
And I'm not dinging whoever did the design. It did not ring true even slightly.
No, agreed.
It was absolutely not where Carrie Bradshaw and Big would live. And I will go to my grave declaring that.
What did you mean by that? Was it too modern? What did
No,
you?
It felt, it did not reflect, didn't reflect much of anything. It didn't have a point of view. It didn't. I'm hoping that the dog makes it. The dog's going out for a walk. But you saw the Rockefeller apartment that I posted after? Like, that is where they should have been. I mean, granted, that wasn't available, but I just, yeah.
It didn't feel there right. Didn't feel old world New York or have any soul to it. Yeah.
And it didn't have the right color, and it had a steel and caned bed with the lacquered linen bedside tables, which are sort of Jean-Michel Franck style. Right. And then it had all that, oh my God, the curtain situation behind the bed. So I just found it, I wasn't saying it was ugly. I just was like, wow, this was not well thought out. Where I always thought her apartment was a perfect match for her. And for the rest of us. We all looked at it, we got it, we loved it. But yeah, I thought that was a character. Charlotte, they've always gotten right.
Totally.
But I was bemused by how wrong that felt.
I agree. It should have been more soulful. Yeah, it felt very.
She's got too much personality not to have brought it in.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that, but I love that you said that because I absolutely agree with you. It was very disappointing. I think we were all excited to see it too.
Yeah, and again, that's not a diss on whoever did it. It just didn't seem Carrie to me.
Right, it was else, but not Carrie.
Yeah, not Carrie. Right. Oh yeah. I mean, every pot has a lid. Yeah, it did not feel very Carrie. I think that would be a fun new parlor game for all of us in this profession. I love watching Law and Order and seeing how wrong they get Upper East Side apartments.
Yeah, you would be amazing at that game.
I would be amazing at that game.
The amount of New York apartments you've seen, touched, experienced, cried in, slept in.
Slept in? Whoa! What does that mean? I'm not squatting at my clients' houses. But no, and it wouldn't even need to be in the city. I just think that would be a fun game for all of us to play. And I guess that is what location people, that's their game.
I did used to think about it'd be so fun to be a set designer.
Yes, though the limitations must be horrendous.
Oh, I'm sure it isn't fun at all, but in my brain it felt fun.
Totally.
Yeah. It doesn't have to function. There's no client. I mean, there is a client, clearly.
Yeah, there is. And you also like mirrors and reflecting cameras.
Oh, true. Yeah. See,
blah, blah, blah.
All the love out of it. Now I don't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But then you look at something like Mad Men and you just think, wow, those people were such geniuses.
Do you get inspired? I get inspired by movies and television shows and things.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, where would any of us be without being inspired by the fashion show in the middle of the movie, The Women? Mm-hmm. Or that it turned to color.
What did someone just told me they're doing their whole house on The Party, like that movie from the 60s.
You mean the Peter Sellers?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in 100 years.
And
that's mid-century modern, right? Doesn't he fall into a pool?
Right. And it's a Hollywood Hills house, so it makes a lot. But I think it's maybe it's an easy reference point for people too, to look at a movie, a TV show. Yeah. I get inspired even with palettes and Mad Men, particularly with Joan's outfits. Oh, I should be doing
Joan.
Right? Wasn't she fabulous?
Greatest. And watching Handmaid's Tale and their use of color. I mean, their use of color is so overt and interesting. Yeah.
Our moodier projects, I would say. There's been a lot of Handmaid's Tale reference, which is just interesting because it's the most depressing show.
this is not, well, we can pick up the phone and talk about this. I would say that I Am Love is, of course, the biggest impact interior on the zeitgeist in cinema in the past 15 years.
That what is?
I Am Love, the Tilda Swinton, I forget how to say his name, but he did Call Me by Your Name. The Luca.
I don't know. I Am Love.
Oh my God, anybody who watches this is gonna like clobber you. You have to watch it immediately. It's the Villanecchi.
I wrote this down.
In Milan.
Yeah.
And you're gonna die.
Well, I loved Call Me by My Name.
Yes, I did too. And there was that very beautiful scene where they're like up against bookcases, and I thought the room with the piano was okay, but no, you have to see the Villanecchi. You're gonna die.
And then I just want to. Were they in Italy?
For I'm Love, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and also for Call Me by Your Name.
Oh,
Call Me.
France. They were in France.
They were in France. Okay, yeah.
I don't know. They were speaking a lot of languages. They were obviously very cosmopolitan people.
Right. Then I just want to have a place in France. But after I watch these shows, then I'll just want to move there.
Yeah.
That's really play, I think, is to have a place in Europe and a place here.
I don't know that my fantasy life can allow me to do that because it's such a waste of money, even in my fantasy life.
Oh, really? In your fantasy?
Well, like if you're spending 9 months anywhere else, I mean, wouldn't you do it to the nines?
Yeah.
Would you rent it out the rest of the time?
Yeah.
Okay. I can get my head around that.
Because just around us, there aren't like wonderful vacation spots. I also hate to drive long distances. So getting on a plane and like watching 3 movies sounds actually better.
Yeah. So I saw that you answered in the questionnaire the same thing I answered, and a lot of people answer is boutique hotel for a dream job.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like what you were saying about like a casting person. Totally. You are creating a total fantasy.
Totally. Like, here's an experience for a moment. You don't have to live in it. You can go a little crazier. I love that. It's such creative freedom that we don't get on the daily.
Somebody is telling us that it was Italy south of Moscazzano. Of course. Certa. Thank you, Sarah. So yeah, I do think one day somebody's going to let all of us designers do a boutique hotel together.
Oh my God, insane.
What I thought the Hotel Russie was before I saw the Hotel Russie was that. I thought every room was like completely different.
Oh, I love that. That's a wonderful hotel. But the hotel I mentioned, so I've been lucky enough to go to Marrakesh recently, times, and the Peacock Pavilion is one of the most amazing places I've ever stayed. It's so special. And I think that I like to travel in a way that feels very authentic. This is outside of Marrakesh. That's what I if I were doing a boutique hotel, I'd want it to be a bit off the beaten path and to be very immersed into the culture.
Sure.
Know, instead of like innovation.
Which is funny because what we do is so much artifice, but
yeah.
No. I mean, there's a place for the artifice and the authenticity. All right, we're at the hour, so I'm going to let you go.
Alexa,
I've loved talking to you. I am so inspired by how you're adulting. Wow.
We're sadly both very much adults.
Very much.
Yeah. All right. So
but,
I will see you soon. Next
you will. And everybody should go to your website and see the things that you're working on, and you're killing it.
Thank you, babe.
Kisses.
Love you. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.